It was December 2000, and evening prayers had begun at the modest mosque in a village called Jarafa on the outskirts of Omdurman, Sudan. The air was heavy with quiet devotion, when suddenly the door swung open and a man entered, his shadow cutting through the soft lamplight. A man called Abbass Al-baqir Abbass. He wasn't a familiar face, just a figure who quietly produced what looked like an assault rifle. In that moment, worship turned to horror. He raised the rifle and fired straight through a window into the praying men, missing the women's section entirely, and even reassuring one fleeing woman that he wouldn't harm her. Within seconds, at least 22 lives were lost, and more than 30 people were injured. The peaceful evening exploded into chaos and heartbreak. Witnesses later described the scene as impossible to unsee. Then came the sound of gunfire again, this time as security forces rushed in. Abbass refused to give himself up and was shot dead during a brief confrontation with police. So who was this man, a killer hidden among us, who struck at the sanctity of prayer? From what investigators pieced together, Abbass was a member of an extremist group known as Takfir wal-Hijra, notorious for their radical views and violent actions. He came prepared, armed with a Zastava M70AB2, a military-style assault rifle. His choice of target and timing carried a message. This was not just violence. This was a statement. The tragedy reverberated across Sudan. Families mourned. The mosque's silence turned into an echo of unanswered questions. Why that mosque? Why that night? And, perhaps most chillingly, why so close to home? Survivors spoke of the sound, the splintering wood, the sudden panic, the cries of the wounded. The mosque, once a place of refuge, had transformed into a scene of devastation. Police arrived quickly but were met with resistance. Only after a short exchange did Abbass fall, his life spilling out on the very floor where others had bowed in peace. In that bleak aftermath, the official line was that this was a lone wolf massacre, a terror attack from within. But as time passed, new questions surfaced about the reach of extremist ideologies in local communities, about warning signs ignored, and about how a single flick of a trigger could shatter so many lives. Decades later, the memory still burns. In homes, in the mosque's empty pews, in the tear-streaked faces of survivors still haunted by the echoes of gunfire. The man known as Abbass, once just another face in the crowd, became a symbol of something far darker: the fragility of peace, and the devastating impact when that peace is stolen so violently. It was a Sunday morning like any other in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Quiet, unassuming, people going about their routines. Inside the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin, worshippers were preparing the communal meal that is the heart of their faith. Then, around 10:25 a.m., the serenity shattered. A man quietly entered. A man named Wade Michael Page. Not previously known to the community, he carried a 9mm pistol and several magazines, purchased legally just days before. He wasn't there to talk. He was there to kill. In the blink of an eye, lives were stolen. 6 people were dead. Several others, including a police officer, were gravely wounded. The temple that stood for peace became a scene of indiscriminate hate. So, who was this man? A veteran of the U.S. Army, once trained in psychological operations but demoted and discharged for misconduct. Wounds cut deeper than any battlefield he'd known. His heart hardened in isolation. In the years that followed, he slipped into the shadows of white power music, joining neo-Nazi bands like End Apathy, Definite Hate, and Blue-Eyed Devils, chanting ideologies that preached racial supremacy. Tattoos on his body whispered his allegiance, the number 14 and Celtic crosses, symbols reverberating with hate. On that dreadful day, he walked in alone. The bullets tore through the temple and through community bonds. A police officer, just a man doing his duty, Lieutenant Brian Murphy, rushed toward the chaos and was shot 15 times, including once in the face, Somehow, he clung to life. Within moments, officers arrived and shot Wade. Yet, before he could be taken into custody, he turned the gun on himself, making this massacre a murder-suicide. Investigators scrambled for answers. Motive remained elusive. A lone attacker? A hate crime? The FBI labeled it domestic terrorism, but provided no clear manifesto or warning. People were left asking, why our temple? Why that morning? The community, shattered, responded with unwavering compassion. Thousands gathered for vigils. Lights spelling out "Wisconsin weeps" along overpasses, a symbol of solidarity. Leaders from both state and national level spoke. And the temple's president, a man of faith, had likely slowed the shooter long enough for others to run. An act of bravery later acknowledged by the FBI. Yet for all the coverage, this tragedy received far less attention than other mass shootings of the time. An American oversight that revealed deeper societal biases. The message became tragically clear. Some lives matter less in the public eye. So the temple stands silent once more, but not empty. The names of the dead, some in their 80s, others much younger, echo in memory. The violent act by one man named Wade Michael Page left scars far beyond the funeral flowers. It became a mirror. We were shown how hate can erupt in the unlikeliest places, and how communities must bear witness together. It was September 26, 1980, a warm Friday evening in Munich, Germany. The city was alive with the energy of the Oktoberfest, the world's largest beer festival, drawing millions of visitors from around the globe. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of steins. But as the night unfolded, a tragedy was about to unfold that would forever change the city's history. At 10:19 p.m., a powerful explosion ripped through the Oktoberfest grounds near the main entrance, known as the Südtor, which means South Gate. The blast was so intense that it shattered windows and sent debris flying, causing chaos and panic among the festival-goers. In the blink of an eye, the celebration turned into a scene of horror. 13 people lost their lives that night, including the perpetrator, and over 200 others were injured, many of them severely. The explosion was later determined to be a bombing, and the investigation quickly turned to uncover the identity of the bomber and the motive behind the attack. The man responsible for this horrific act was Gundolf Köhler, a 21-year-old student from the small town of Donaueschingen in southern Germany. Köhler had been studying civil engineering at the University of Stuttgart, but his academic pursuits were overshadowed by his growing involvement in far-right extremist ideologies. He had become increasingly isolated and radicalized, expressing strong nationalist and xenophobic views. On the night of the bombing, Köhler had positioned himself near the entrance of the festival grounds, carrying a suitcase containing a homemade bomb. The device was designed to cause maximum casualties, and tragically, it succeeded. The explosion was a deliberate act of terror, targeting innocent civilians enjoying a public celebration. In the aftermath of the bombing, authorities launched an extensive investigation to determine Köhler's motives and connections. They discovered that he had been associated with neo-Nazi groups and had attended meetings where extremist ideologies were discussed. However, despite these findings, the full extent of Köhler's affiliations and the reasons behind his decision to carry out the attack remain subjects of debate and speculation. Some theories suggest that Köhler's actions were influenced by a desire to make a statement against the perceived decline of German culture and values. Others believe that he may have been seeking revenge for personal grievances or attempting to gain recognition within extremist circles. The lack of a clear manifesto or direct communication from Köhler has left many questions unanswered. The bombing had a profound impact on Germany and the international community. It highlighted the growing threat of far-right extremism and the potential for violence stemming from radical ideologies. In response, Germany implemented stricter laws and measures to combat terrorism and hate crimes, aiming to prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future. Today, the Oktoberfest bombing remains one of the darkest chapters in Munich's history. The victims are remembered annually, and their stories serve as a somber reminder of the dangers posed by extremism and the importance of vigilance in protecting public safety.